Hey, Article Clubbers, it's Mark, and I hope you're having a relaxing end of the year. I'm going to be back next Thursday, but until then, I have something special for you. It is Article Club's first ever end of year podcast reflection episode. And so I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be me and Melinda, just in a few seconds here, discussing some highlights from 2023 and also what's coming up in the new year. So instead of telling you about it now, why don't we just go right in to the discussion? I hope that you enjoy it, and I'll see you here next Thursday. Hey, Melinda, it's great to talk to you again. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm very excited because this is our first ever end of year reflection review podcast episode that we've ever done. How do you feel about this?
Woohoo! I'm very excited. I think this is great. I love this as a new tradition for us.
It's a great tradition, and we're going to be talking about like some great moments from the year. I mean, one of them is that you came onto Article Club, so like that's really cool. But yeah, it's just it's the end of the year. We've done a lot of reading, and there's been a lot of stuff, so it's just time to sort of like see all the highlights and some great moments, right?
Yes, I agree. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite things that we've read this year, favorite moments we've had during our monthly discussions, and look forward a little bit into the future to talk about what we are excited for in 2024. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you, is there an article that you really enjoyed this year? I'll also be really interested to see if we have like similar answers. That'll be
Hmm.
really fun. But do you have a favorite article that you've read this year?
It's very interesting because, like obviously there's like the best of, that just
Of
happened,
course.
but then there's also like personal favorites or whatever. And, I looked and my favorite, happened to be one of the Article Club choices as well. And it was back in March because you started in February, right?
I
February,
think around
March.
then, yes.
So my favorite article personally that just comes up is the Laura Preston, The Human Fallback about AI.
Ah, yes, that was
And
really good.
obviously this year has been the year of AI,
Yeah.
and it's almost like we predicted it, a little bit with this article. And I just loved that piece because it was very spooky, like this idea of a human helping a computer fake other humans into believing that it was a human.
Yeah, that could be honestly a sci-fi novel.
Yeah, so I just loved it because also Laura Preston, was basically writing in, a publication that wasn't one of the famous ones or whatever.
Mhm, mhm.
And it was just really cool. And I liked the discussion from it too, but specifically not just like this whole AI thing. I really liked the comment about late stage capitalism, which is of course a big theme in
Big
Article
theme.
Club.
Mhm,
And, she's like this 30-ish, year old woman, just like trying
mhm.
to make it. And the way that she makes it is basically becoming less of a human.
Yeah, I think that article, especially because we were reading it like right at the beginning of the year when there was a lot of discussion about like ChatGPT and OpenAI. And now reflecting on it, right? Like we're recording this in December of 2023. All of the hectic, wild things that happened over at OpenAI with Sam Altman. And I'm sure it will continue to unfold as the years to come in terms of like what AI is doing, how is it being incorporated into our lives. And it's interesting because you know what I want to say is she gave a human face to AI, but you're right. Like she also was not human and what technology does to our humanity and her own identity. I loved in that article how vulnerable she was and how open she was about how that was like a difficult time in her life, basically becoming like a machine. That's a really good one,
Yeah.
especially. And that'll be really interesting to continue to read, I think, too, as events unfold in AI to remind ourselves of the people that are behind, like particularly the chatbots that she was
Mhm.
working through.
Did you think that I was gonna say The Fog, because I talked about it all the time?
No, I thought you were gonna say the one. Maybe this is hubris. I thought you were gonna say the one I was gonna say.
Oh, no, good, yeah, so what is yours?
The Betrayal by Dashka Slater. To me, that was and we had talked about this when we were able to interview her, when we previewed it. We were like, this is our summer blockbuster. This was the Barbenheimer moment in my personal life in terms of articles. I adore her. I raved about her book. I think personally, one, I think it's just incredibly well written. I think she's a wonderful, thoughtful writer. She clearly researched this for, I think, 5 years. So it's standing on a mountain of research that she has done and a bunch of emotional labor, because it was a very tough subject matter for her to talk about. I think it also hit on a lot of things that I am just personally interested in. The way the internet shapes young people, how it has shaped us just as a society, how anti-blackness is also like a currency, how unfortunately, and how like liberal enclaves can have their own issues in terms of race, and particularly like young men and masculinity, and almost like an on ramp to misogyny. I don't know if I'm selling this article because it's all of the hard things, but it is the truth. And I think that it is such a it's like a tapestry of all of those themes that are talking about real people and their real experiences. And so that was my favorite one to read this year. I think I've read it now, I don't know, maybe 5 times.
You have, like, begun to shift my ideas about because, like, I knew it was a
Mm.
big blockbuster, but the way that you just talked about it, it's like,
Mm.
yeah, like, that has Article Club through and through all over it.
Yes, so
It
many different themes that we talk about.
it gets me thinking sort of like, okay, so we did the 1619 book project a couple years
Yes.
ago. I feel like this book, I haven't read the book, but this book I feel could be, a study for perhaps next year or whatever, because
Oh, yes.
and especially because, Dashka Slater is also local. It's always great to like, well,
Yes.
local to me.
Right.
We could
Mhm.
always like try to ask her to come by. But do you feel like the book is also riveting as far as like,
I do. I do because she also goes beyond so the betrayal, the piece in the New York Times Magazine, it goes through like basically their high school years. But the book talks about them as 20 somethings in the current time, how they're still grappling with it. And I think that is such an interesting point about the internet, of how there's a permanence.
Mhm,
And I think one of the themes in the article is, what do we do when young people make mistakes? And are they allowed the space
mhm.
to make those mistakes? Even though these mistakes are huge and cause like real harm to people, are they just going to have to live with it forever? And so I do find the book very, very riveting. So highly, highly recommend. And yeah, and I think it'd be great to have as like a study next year. And it would be great to even just talk to Dashka Slater again. She's lovely.
Yeah, she's totally lovely.
So, Mark, did you switching to the best part of Article Club, which is the community? We read wonderful things, of course. Me and you, we get to talk to some amazing authors. But I think we both agree that the best part are the people in Article Club, the people that come to the discussions and who get to be in community and read. Did you have a favorite discussion point where you learned something during one of the monthly discussions this year?
I mean, I think I have like a lot of thoughts about that. So this one I will come back to the fog about
Okay.
adoption. I mean, for me personally, that was like really an important article because I started with ignorance and then I read the piece and I learned so much and was really honored and to have read the piece. But then it just got even deeper in the
Mm,
discussion with folks talking about their lived experiences, with folks like really going deep into the article, and I just felt like we always talk about how article clubbers are kind and thoughtful, but I felt like, especially in that piece, like we had built, like we're continuing to build with folks coming back as well as new, fresh voices. And
mhm,
I just felt it was something that I really personally got something out of. And I don't think that I'll forget about it, like it's not just, even though these articles are, you get whatever we get, that
mhm,
one's going to definitely like stay with me. And specifically because a group of people from across the country in this Zoom room were able to like get really, really deep into such an important topic. So I know it's just fresh, it just happened, recently, but I was
mhm.
reflecting. That's sort of like the moment. But I could also talk about other things too. So, for
Yeah.
example, like you and I did not know each other at all at the beginning of the
Mhm.
year. And like this, I mean, I've learned so much from you and just all the stuff that you've been bringing to the community. So really appreciative about that too, because like at this point, you're a co-host and you're also a facilitator sometimes too.
Yes, which has been wonderful. It's been wonderful to chat with you. I mean, in my mind, it's like, it's just me and you. And then, a few of our favorite friends, a few of our favorite people who are also listening. And, I think I've said this before. I think great writing, great art, but specifically, of course, in this space, great writing facilitates community. I think the world that we live in, we crave connection. We are social beings. And so being able to read articles that are really thoughtful with people that are really thoughtful is the special magic that Article Club creates. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm
Yeah,
grateful for you too.
I agree with you that So, for example, at work, we sometimes read articles that are
Mhm,
okay, but they're not the best. They're not the
mhm.
highest quality. And yeah, we can talk about how great, the people are because people do really prepare and bring their full selves, but it's because it's the highest level of writing. So, yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. So we share a favorite moment. This is where we share a favorite thing.
Eh,
My favorite discussion was also from the fog, which again did just happen. I was really fortunate that I had a couple of people in my group who were either adopted or people in their family were adopted. And like you, I came really ignorant to the issue. I don't have anyone in my life that I know is adopted. And without the fog as a discussion article for the month, an article club, I would have not actually been able to be in a space with those people. And so, I learned like even just like actual like hard facts about the adoption system in the country. One of the people in my discussion shared that in the state of Illinois, in order to find if you want to find your birth parents, you basically can like fill out a form and then your birth parents fill out the same form. And that's kind of how they match whether you're both interested in meeting up. And so that's a way to like, have a reunion, which I did not know. And then asked a question of like, well, why don't all the states do that? Why is it not easier for people to find their birth parents? And I think just even that alone, someone sharing their personal experience of that, not only I felt was really valuable because, they were able to be in a space where they felt vulnerable and safe to share that, but also educational, which I think is another great part about Article Club. So I really enjoyed my discussion group. Shout out to our discussion groups. You all know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have a favorite author? I mean, obviously Dashka Slater, but as far as like the interviews, like because we did
Hmm.
some we did some interviews together. Was there an
We
in like
did. I mean, I feel is it wrong to keep picking Dashka Slater? I guess that's the honest opinion. Honestly, when we talked to Dashka Slater, she was so open and she was so kind and she was so thoughtful. And I think I even said this at the end of the interview where I was like, we could talk to you for 5 more hours, but
Mhm.
you are a busy person and I don't want to keep you. I think too, for her, I think and I believe this of all the authors, but I think also maybe particularly because she's a parent to a young boy that she also just feels like what she's writing about really viscerally. And I thought that her way of talking about that topic in ways that are like questions to actually be asking like parents and young people, not just from like an academic or like philosophical space, I really enjoyed and I found
Yeah.
really valuable.
Yeah, she was great. I mean, everybody was great. I mean,
Yeah,
first of
everybody's
all,
great.
first of all, saying yes, is great, but then
Yeah.
also like so generous and so thoughtful. My personal favorite was Emily Bazelon.
Love Emily. I was gonna say Emily Bazelon too. Then I
I
would end up saying all of them. That's
But,
right.
like, talking first of all, she knows stuff about affirmative action and, like,
She
writes about it.
does.
But I remember doing that interview, and at the end, I was like, "Wow, that is some high level, next level pro." Like,
Mhm.
because if you, like, listen back to that, she was, like it was almost like she was another co-host, you know what I mean? Like
It almost felt like she already knew what your questions were going to be, and
yeah.
she had thought of, like, completely fleshed out answers that almost even, like, answered points that maybe would have been a follow-up question.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it
and,
was
like,
great.
she, like, filled in for parts that I wasn't so great. Like, it was, yeah, total pro. So I like, Emily Bazelon as well.
Yeah, Emily Bazelon's great.
Yeah.
All of them are great. Now, Mark, is there anything you're looking forward to in 2024 as we wrap up this year and look at the new one?
I mean, so many things. I love my day job and everything, but like, what if we had more time? I don't know.
Mhm.
The biggest thing that I continue to come back to is that this is a great community of folks who like are kind and thoughtful and who read. And also, I've talked to a lot of people and folks struggle with reading because we have so much going on in our lives. And I do feel that Article Club could be an opportunity to like support each other. You've talked about this as well.
Mhm.
How do we support each other to read a little bit more, to carve out that time, whether it's Article Club articles or not,
Mhm.
to like really try to support each other to like read a little bit more. And of course, like a New Year's resolution, we always want to read, but like, what does that actually look like? And I do fun. I mean, here's where I get really romantic and a little bit cheesy, but I really do believe that if we do carve out time to read, our brains change. We're able to sort of reflect on a larger, in a larger capacity. And in general, I think that, good things happen. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why, I started this a long time ago. So I think that's one of the things, that I might want to like, or, we may want to talk about is sort of like,
Mhm.
how do we help and support each other, to be reading more of these pieces?
Yes, yes, and I think that, like, dovetails with the fact that, like, our community is just really lovely and really wonderful, and, like, reading together is just something that's, like, I think what makes it really fulfilling. Also, just on a, like, on a like, a research level, isn't it there I think there's an Ezra Klein podcast about deep reading and the benefits to that that came out maybe, like, a couple of weeks ago. So, Ezra Klein agrees with you, Mark.
Yeah.
Reading is good for our brains.
Yeah. Ezra Klein. Yeah. So that's one of mine. What's one of yours?
So I'm really looking forward to continuing something that I actually started this year. I guess we've kind of named it the Anne Friedman chat as just like a casual nickname for it. But Anne Friedman is a writer and a podcast co-host of the longtime Call Your Girlfriend podcast. And she currently is writing a personal essay series, which is different for her because normally she's written pieces, like in Elle or The Cut or The Atlantic about like bigger issues, particularly like feminist pieces. But this is her personal essay series that's going for 10 weeks. Where she is grappling with the decision of going from being a child free person to being a new parent. And it is visceral, it is really raw. It's also really short. So, if you are one of those people who is trying to read more in the coming year, these essays come out every Friday through her newsletter, which is free. And they're very short. They're maybe 5 or 6 paragraphs long. They're not very long at all. And I find it to be so interesting and fascinating and also very connective to be talking in the Substack chat about her pieces with other people that are article clubbers, how these pieces resonate with them. What we had a recent chat about like which quotes really spoke to people, which I found really, it's always really wonderful when like somebody's like the quote that really speaks to you speaks to someone else, but then they bring like a different point of view as to why it really spoke to them. So I'm excited to continue that into 2024. So if you're listening to it now, it's not too late to join the party, the chat party. Maybe that's what we'll call it. I'm really excited about that. And I'm just really excited to like continue to read more pieces and to continue what you were saying earlier, to like foster the relationships of people that come to the discussions every month. Cause it's been really wonderful to not only be a facilitator, but also to have some of the same people in my group and get to talk to them about different pieces and to already have that kind of foundation and also welcome in new people who maybe they really felt that like an article really resonated with them and to give them the space to share why. So I'm just excited about that too.
Yeah, me too. And I really appreciate like, the chat as well as like the discussion because the discussion is wonderful. But also if you are new, it might be a little scary, to like
Hmm.
try out. And so I feel like the chat is another great way, to sort of like dip your toes into Article Club and see sort of like what it is. Like so, but a lot of people have asked, like, how do you even get to the chat? So can you explain that too?
Sure. There is a chat function in the Substack app and also on your desktop that looks like two little text bubbles. And if you click on that while you're inside of like the Article Club Substack, it'll take you directly there. It's the same thread every single time. So you don't have to like rejoin it. And if you go to my intro piece about it, or I've like published notes about it, I always publish like the exact thread. So you don't have to keep rejoining it. And it's fairly, like you were saying, it's fairly flexible, like the essays come out on Friday and folks like immediately jump in if they want to, if they have the time. Some people chime in like a little later in the week, depending on when they've had been time to read it. It's basically like a fun group thread talking about Anne's work with fun people.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I have so many ideas for, Article Club. We're coming up on whatever year it is, and I just
Hmm.
feel like it's really building and deepening. Yeah, I have so many I don't want to share them because there's so
Yeah,
many, and
don't.
then the podcast would like be like 30 or 40 more minutes.
We have to keep
But
people in suspense.
I think a big thing though that I really want to think about, and you and I have also talked about, is
Mhm.
which articles and which writers also are we choosing as well.
Yes. Hmm.
Every single article that basically I choose, I feel really great about. And yet I do feel it's time to sort of get more voices out there as well, as far as like having more folks being able to recommend articles. So anybody can
Mm,
recommend an article, and
mhm,
yet I have been like the person to sort of choose. And I feel like now that it's more about we instead of me, I
mhm.
feel like, it's time to sort of like make that a little bit, to spread that around a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that, and this actually is kind of, like, leads into a bit of a bonus question, if you're open to it.
Yeah, let's do a
Is there
bonus.
anything that you're planning on reading over the break, or any, like, different, like, publications that you're gonna dive into?
I think
Any
that
books? Anything, Mark.
I think that's a great question. So my book club just finished Cloud Cuckoo Land. Have you read this?
Oh, I've heard of this. I haven't read it yet, no.
Okay, so that we just finished, and that was really amazing. It's
Mhm.
basically about the power of story
Mm,
to make our world better. So that one is the one that I'm just finishing up. But as far as like books, no, I don't have any specific books on my mind, but
mhm.
obviously plenty of articles,
Mhm.
in my queue. How about you?
Well, speaking of, like, looking at maybe, like, different authors to come in for the monthly discussion club, I recently subscribed to The Point magazine and also Harper's Weekly, as, like, fun places to read things. The Point magazine actually has an article that, Anne Friedman published in her newsletter, a link to it from this past February that I found really, really captivating, and so I decided to join in and mosey around and see what other pieces are being published in there. These are dream people I would love to have in part of Article Club for next year. I'm going to read Page Boy by Elliot Page and also Opinions by Roxane Gay over the break. So I'm just going to put that out into the universe that maybe one day we'll get to sit down and interview both of them. They'd be wonderful to have as part of Article Club. But those are two books that I'm definitely going to read. And I am also going to read, finally, I'm going to read Middlemarch by George Eliot.
There
That's
you
my
go.
promise to myself.
There you go. I think that's great. Yeah, let's get some of the yeah, let's get Roxane Gay on the show.
Oh my gosh, I would faint again. That would be she would be amazing. She would be to I again, I find her nonfiction, her fiction, her columns in the New York Times, all of them I read and I think all of them are amazing. That would be wouldn't it be great if the next year and wrap up in 2024, we're both like, oh, that Roxane Gay interview was so good.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
I know, why not? Well, Mark, this has been wonderful to review the year with you, our very first year in review. Can't wait for many, many more. Grateful for you, grateful for all the people in Article Club. And I hope you have a wonderful, restful break. Excited to see you again in January.
Yeah, it's gonna be great resting.
Mm,
I'll miss you and everybody
mm.
else at Article Club. But yeah, at some point, you have to sort of take a week or two off and reflect
Yes.
and get ready for January.
Yes. We'll see everyone soon.
It's gonna be great. Thank you so much, Melinda.
Thank you.